they understand, I think, on some level that the Electoral College is a bit of bullshit. Now, if you're a Republican, you love the Electoral College. But I think if you were like, hey, let's talk about the theory, not the practice, there is, let's put it this way, electing president by popular vote has broad majority support, bipartisan, around the country.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Before You Speak podcast. I'm your host, Derek Peterson, and I'm just processing the fire hose of my news feed with this guy over here.
What's up, everybody? I am Elwin, and the fire hose of my news feed is filled with MAGA tears, motherfucker. Let's go, Virginia.
Yeah. Man, I'm still not fully convinced, and we're going to get into the gerrymandering stuff as we go here, because that's what our episode is about today. Yay. But it's interesting to see the dynamic just on the internet in general of how people are talking about it, because, people are pissed off and they're like, you're ruining our democracy. Meanwhile, like Virginia and California both voted on if they should gerrymander, and all the Republican state just go ahead and do it. So I'm like, come on.
Fuck all the way off with all of that bullshit. You started it in Texas when Trump said, do this, and Texas just did it, and there was no vote. And now you're pissed off that it's not working and that other states are doing it, and they're actually doing it with a popular vote and with a referendum and with a multi-step process instead of just ramming it down people's throats. There was a great side-to-side photos that I saw today of some guy, his name is Scott Pressler from TPUSA, where on Sunday he was in Indiana speaking to a group of people because they want to primary the Indiana Republicans who voted against redistricting. Right. So they're mad that Indiana did not do redistricting. So they want to primary the Republicans out so that they can do redistricting. And the next day he's in Virginia speaking to people going like, we can't redistrict. Redistricting is this crime against democracy. It's like, bro, 24 hours ago, you were going to try to vote out people who did the very thing you're advocating for today. That's why my fire hose is filled with MAGA tears, because the bullshit is just so transparent.
Dude, we've lost values in this country completely. And the worst part is that we don't even pretend to hide it anymore. I feel like there was at least a period of time where we like this stuff would be like, hey, we don't want to do that. But then they would feel guilty enough about like going out the next day and saying the exact opposite thing. So like there was some self-consciousness about it. And now I think all of that is just gone. People also, are just like, I can do.
We'll get into this, in a bit. So, but the Republicans have been playing a different sport than the Democrats for years now, probably since at least when Obama started and McConnell's number one goal was to stop Obama, right? They've stopped governing. They've stopped legislating. It's just pure political power. And the Democrats spent, let's say, 20 years, almost 20 years, trying to figure out the rules of a game that the Republicans weren't playing. And finally, the Democrats have realized we got to play the rules, we got to play the game they're playing. If we want to change the rules, we need to win under their rules first. And it's what the Virginia, the woman who's the head of the House of Representatives there, she's on record. She said, you started this, we're fucking finishing it. That's her direct quote. Yeah.
Which is great. But then also at the same time, I think it's kind of hilarious because like even still throughout this process, the Democrats aren't like forcing it. They're still like very gently, all right, like these guys are messing with us, so like let's hold a vote and make sure that we can compete. So I mean, there's still like a gentle nature of like the Democrats. Well, at some point I just want a Democrat to be as like on fire for doing the right shit as Trump is for doing the wrong shit. Like, I want somebody that is willing to just railroad everybody to just be like, no, motherfuckers, we are going to push this through because it's the best thing for the country, not because it's going to help out my 4 friends become billionaires, that are teetering on that 100 million marker that need to like push up into the B status. So, but we'll get more into the gerrymandering here in just a minute. While we still have some news to cover. We talked about updates on the Iran war, which, if I'm being honest, no one knows. I'm pretty confident that our president doesn't even have an update on the Iran war
That's
because
completely accurate.
because every time he's like, yeah, we're fine, the strait's open, like as he's speaking, Iranians are bombing ships trying to go through. So
Yeah.
wait, no, it's not. We're negotiating still, I think. Is JD Vance going over there somewhere? Maybe
No,
Pakistan.
they don't like JD Vance, so it's not him. This morning, as of
They're
this
not the
morning,
only
Iran
ones.
hadn't. Yeah, as of this morning, Iran hadn't sent a delegation, or nobody was there from Iran. I don't think anybody in human history has tried to declare victory harder than Donald Trump is trying to declare victory over and over and over again. And the Iranians are just like, "Hey, guess what? Fuck off. Um, you don't get to tell us that you won." And it's,
It's the
I'm laughing, but it's bad all the way around. But it's just like it ties to Virginia, right? It like uh, where Trump was like in Texas, hey, we're going to do this thing and nobody's going to fight back. Right. And all of a sudden, these states are California and Virginia are fighting back. Trump was like, we're going to go to Iran and they're not going to fight back. And Iran's fighting back. And he just like his entire political being seems to be predicated on this idea that if he just runs through shit, nobody's ever going to fight back. And the minute somebody fights back, he freaks out and the whole thing falls apart. And now with Iran, I honestly think he's just getting bored.
dude, I do you know what the scariest part about this is for me now is just seeing what's happening, because there was this era, and I don't think it was just us. If I'm being honest, I think for the most part a lot of the world believed that, in similarly to Americans, that Americans have so much military power that messing with us is beyond like question, right? And I think the scariest part about what's happening right now is what Iran is doing in fighting back against us is actually showing the world that we're not as strong as we had once said we were. So, and Trump flip-flopping like this and declaring victory, like, there's real reports about, our missile stockpiles being low. We spend way too much money on them compared to other countries. Like all of these interceptor missiles that are, and we jumped into this without a plan. But now as our army is spread thin, there's rumors that Russia pushes harder against Ukraine and tries to move more, and China potentially goes after Taiwan. Correct? Like there's a bunch of stuff going on right now that uh, the U.S. kind of held a lot of these things at bay because our military was considered the most powerful thing in the world, and Iran is like that little scruffy kid in the schoolyard that everybody thought would just get their ass kicked, and is like not allowing it to happen. And like the this is what happens when a bully shows up and just tries to like walk in, and take somebody out. Yeah, it happens occasionally to,
Yeah,
but
or this is what happens when power is exercised poorly and stupidly, right? It's like what
oh,
Iran
it's
is doing is
awful.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not unlike what Ukraine is doing, where everybody thought that Russia was going to roll right over Ukraine. Four
yeah.
years on, it's I don't know if it's a stalemate or not, but it's pretty damn close, and there's a lot of dead people in its wake. You hit on something that's I think we don't sort of appreciate enough. So people say like, well, America's not the world's policeman. Well, the world worked pretty well with America as its policeman. The problem
Yep.
with that is, just like the problem with police, if the police start beating up innocent people, then the innocent people are going to be like, well, fuck the police. I don't trust them. I don't believe in them. I'm really skeptical of them. And, that trust and credibility that the law enforcement has, which is probably what makes it 90% of its efficacy is in that goes away. And now the United States is like, well, we can't be trusted with our allies. We can't be trusted to not start stupid wars. When we do start stupid wars, we are exposing ourselves as unable to win them convincingly and lacking a plan. So, now the world is like, okay, cool. Well, this thing that we thought was our policeman, which frankly worked for 50 years,
Yep.
uh, that's not there anymore. And we're just having this incredible reshuffling of, that we're living through this incredible reshuffling of world order.
Yeah. And the truth is the world needs a good guy. Like, there's so much stuff going on in it's such a, like, if you actually scope out on this stuff, it's really interesting to like ponder on. Is just like, we have like, we create the idea of like what's right and wrong, and the values in which we kind of live by as humans. And we spend the majority of our life like going like playing like good versus evil, like good guys, bad guys, we have these set of rules that we all kind of subscribe to and believe in, and then there's people that decide to break all of those rules, and then we have to create a bunch of people that are there to enforce them and fight back against those. And like, the world needs a good guy, and we don't, I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm like, man, it's getting confused. I always viewed us as that. And
See, I don't,
it
I'm
sucks.
not,
It's
so,
it sucks
go
that I'm
ahead.
starting to feel like we're not, you know.
Well, have we? How long have we been the good guy? Like, I don't think necessarily the world
We
needs a
may
good
not
guy.
this
I
may
think,
be my ignorance, by the way. Yeah, it might be
well,
my political negligence with how much terrible shit the US has done in the world, which I'm very well aware that, I'm not a historian, will never pretend to be one, but, like, the overall, I kind of felt like, we I felt like the values and morals that we stood for as Americans were one of like equality and prosperity and, like,
at least
lift everyone's
ostensibly,
boat.
it's
Yeah.
what we talked about. But I think for the rest of the world, like why I blanch a little bit at the good guy is there's plenty of the world that isn't interested in those things,
Yeah.
and that is where things get interesting. Is it our job to spread those values around the rest of the world? And I don't think so. We tried it for a long time and it just hasn't worked. If Iran wants to, if they can't figure their own shit out and they stay with a brutalist theocracy, that's Iran's problem. you know if
Yeah.
Iran's brutalist theocracy blows up one of our aircraft carriers, then yeah, we should very quickly, swiftly punch them in the nose and be like, fucking don't do that again. Right. And if we have to
Yeah.
do that 50 times, cool, whatever. Like, because every time, I think historically, when you do that, you buy a few years, you buy 5 to 7 years before things
Yep.
are like, well, they haven't punched us in the nose a little bit. Then something else happened. Punch them in the nose again. Right.
Yep.
But you don't get in the ring with them for 15 rounds, because then you run the risk of exposing weakness. Then you run the risk of it not going well. So you have to build and maintain this mythology of strength. You have to have the strength to do that. But the smarter you are and when you use it, the better, the more everybody's gonna be like, yeah, I don't want to get punched in the nose by that guy. It's gonna fuck us up. So I'll play around the edges, but I'm not really gonna go crazy out of my lane.
Yeah. And dude, I think if this is showing itself to be, this war is showing itself to be so dangerous and for a number of reasons, including what you just said. And then on top of that, just how exorbitantly more expensive it is to build weapons in the US now. Like, they went back and asked for like 1.5 trillion for the defense budget, and the Pentagon hasn't passed an audit in God knows how long. And so we're essentially just funneling more and more money to a bunch of super rich people that are marking up the price of, like, this is probably, in my opinion, one of the most egregious offenses in our country, is the fact that people are making so much money off of Americans' tax dollars under the disguise of safety and protection, when the reality is that, oh, we've funneled more money than any country ever has to their military for decades, and we're broke, we're running out of stuff. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, that there is no way that any of this should be happening at the moment, none. And that, it's one man's opinion, but I think it's a pretty strong one. So the I also did want to talk about Kash Patel here, because this was hilarious. Kash Patel suing the Atlantic in a move that is like Onion-esque. It's like the the guy that, off of an article that came out, that just claimed basically that he was an alcoholic, while there's videos all over the internet of him like drinking
Yeah.
through different times, and he is suing them for 250 million, which I think is hilarious. I think the discovery portion of this case is what everybody is just looking forward to.
Let's go.
I have a feeling this all gets dropped quietly over the next few months. So
There's not enough popcorn in the world for that discovery. It's
yes.
his his press conference yesterday was hilarious, right? It's like, are you saying that you've never had alcohol on the job? You're lying. No, what? No, I'm asking you a question. You're lying, media. No, but have you actually? Like, 9 different people said you have. It's like, scum media. It's, bro. It's, yeah. So the answer is yes, because we've seen it, and that story was sourced with 12 different people, right?
Yeah.
Like, 12 different people. None of them went on record, which I understand, like, with their names, but that means
Yeah,
that
he's the
12 different
FBI
people,
director.
right? That means that
You go on record with your name and you're immediately getting, like, people
fired.
are
Yeah.
showing up at your house. Yeah.
That means that 12 different people corroborated basically these stories. And it is fun to make fun of him because he's a fucking ass clown. But you know, was he drunk when the Brown shooting happened and he didn't show up for like 36 hours? How has this affected his handling of the Charlie Kirk case? When he was slugging beers with the U.S. hockey team, I forget exactly what it was, but there was something pretty big going on that required an FBI director. So,
Yeah.
it's
There's
not,
always something big going on, bro. It's like,
yeah. So
there should be zero at this moment. There in time, there, like, that job, like, there are
you
certain
just can't
jobs
drink. You
in the,
can't drink on
yeah,
you can't drink when you're the FBI director. It's like,
yeah, dude, I'm sorry. Like, these aren't like dude, you're not a podcaster anymore. This isn't like a job that you like. There are certain jobs, including the president of the United States, and some of these jobs that hold more weight than others, that require serious behavior. Meaning,
sobriety.
like, yes, sobriety. Like, when you are the director, when you are in charge of the military or the FBI, that should be a requirement, that you should not be high or drunk during the time that you hold that position, just in general. Like, I think it's as simple as that, but all of this is dumb as shit. It's literally like the most, I remember this time I got caught stealing a goldfish when I was a kid, or a Swedish fish off a counter. And my mom, like, I was in the back of the car and I couldn't wait till I got home to eat it. So I threw it in my mouth, and my mom saw me chewing something. She's like, "What are you chewing? Where did you get that?" I'm like, "Nothing. Nowhere." Like, as I'm chewing it, this is like the most guilty you can possibly be, right? I'm like, I'm not chewing anything. As I'm chewing it, this is the easiest thing to see through as far as human nature goes. It's literally childish at its core. It's just the attacking somebody that's attacking you is literally like what 6-year-olds do. So,
But
like,
it's what works every time these guys do it. You can tell it's performative. If they don't do it, Trump's going to be mad. Like, it's what they've been taught to do, just attack back. And notably, like, we're talking about Kash Patel, you now had your third female cabinet member be fired this week.
yep.
The dumb men still going strong.
It's a meritocracy. Everybody's in there because they're as well equipped for these jobs as anybody else has ever been. They don't allow people to just skate by. We're bringing that back.
So the
Uh,
best and the brightest.
it's the dumbest. Did you have anything more you wanted to chat about in
Yeah,
regards to Virginia?
yeah, there was something, and this is like mostly just because I don't think people know about this enough, and I think it's really fascinating. There's this thing that's been going around for 20 years. It's called the National Popular Vote Compact. And what this
Hmm.
is it's legislation that is designed to be brought up in all 50 states. And what the legislation says is that when enough states have signed on to it, that the total of those states' electoral votes is 270 or more, then those states pledge to have their electors back the winner of the national popular vote in a presidential election. So it's basically an end run around the electoral college. So Virginia's having a good week here, good couple weeks. They finally passed that into law last week. So that makes 18 states totaling 222 electoral votes that have signed it. So right now it doesn't do anything, right? It has no effect because they're not at 270. But this is a really it's been proposed in I think six other states. Pennsylvania, it was just introduced for the first. It's passed one house of the legislature in six other states. Pennsylvania just introduced it for the first time last year, and it's getting a little bit close. And I think people should know about it because I think most people, they understand, I think on some level, that the electoral college is a bit of bullshit. Now, if you're a Republican, you love the electoral college, but I think
Yeah.
if you were like, hey, let's talk about the theory, not the practice, there is, let's put it this way: electing president by popular vote has broad majority support, bipartisan around the country.
Yeah.
It's how most people think it should happen. So I just kind of wanted to, I find that people don't have never heard of that. And the more people know about it, the better.
Agreed. Agreed 1,000%. And this is something as I was prepping for our podcast today, as we get into solutions and talking about the future, like this is something that I think absolutely needs to change. Like, systems, there's foundations. I mean, there's a reason like even our constitution gets amended, right? Like we grow, we change, the economy, the country changes, how things happen changes. There's so much that needs to change, like as time progresses, with new technologies, with how we live our lives and do everything, and this is absolutely one of them. The electoral college is a completely dated system that's being held in place by people that benefit from it, in large part
Yeah.
with along with the rest of our country.
And I'm not sure it was ever a good system. And there's a lot that changes when there's technological change and stuff. But I think this is just, it's a bad system. It's proven to
Yeah.
be a bad system because not only does it sometimes elect someone who didn't get the popular vote, but it also means that we only give a shit about four states. And if you
Yeah.
drill it down, we only really give a shit about like 15 counties
Yeah.
because that's how the popular vote doesn't matter. It matters how those counties vote. It matters how those states vote. And that's not the way to elect a president, right? It means that in Texas, my Democratic vote rarely means anything. It's just a tally on a sheet that doesn't matter.
Yeah. You're 1,000% correct. And it's also a critical aspect of why we need to change a lot of this stuff. Like I think if the majority of Americans are voting a certain way, then that's the way America should lean. And if you don't, like, then the way things should change is by having people that have great ideas and can reach across the aisle and find middle ground with other candidates. And we've elevated a system that promotes the opposite of that. We've elevated a system now that is putting us at war with each other rather than incentivizing people actually being more moderate and holding views from both sides and trying to make things work. And that's ultimately one of the foundational things that needs to change in our country as quickly as humanly possible, because this shit is getting old. I mean, dude, nobody's happy right now. Liberals aren't happy. Republicans aren't happy. Everybody's just fucking angry at each other all the time. And it's I don't think it's meant to be this way. And if I'm being honest, I don't think we're as different from each other as a lot of people make it out to be. It's just we've bought into the system that basically tells us that we have to, like, if you're a Republican, you're a Republican. If you're a Democrat, you're a Democrat. And there's not a lot of middle ground. And the truth is the majority of America is in the middle. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
know
mean,
you're not, but
no, but I also think like it's not that what you're saying is wrong, but I think that there's more agency, and it's a perfect lead in to talk about gerrymandering because that's
yeah,
ultimately the most sharp tool people are using. But like one of the things that happens with gerrymandering is people self sort. Democrats move to Democratic areas and Republicans move to Republican areas.
yeah,
And that is a form of polarization. But that is not do that's not because of some sort of underhanded machinations. That's because I want to live near Democrats. I want to live in a
yeah.
in a place where the school district is going to share my values, where the government is going to share my values, and people move to that. So there are differences between us, and they are absolutely being exploited. But we also do it to ourselves.
Yeah. I agree with that. And being somebody that works in real estate, I have a very clear understanding of that because I'm dealing with it firsthand, daily. And to the point where, even right now, I have clients moving to Austin from other parts of Texas that I'm helping because they can't live in deep red parts of Texas anymore. But they can't leave Texas. So they're like, we need to find a blue spot in the state. So they end up moving here. And I have people that, Austin is still too much and they're moving out. I have people that are more red and, are moving out to the hill country areas where it leans that direction. One client selling their house and moving out of the country because they can't handle it anymore. So yeah, all this stuff makes sense. But let's get to the foundational parts of this. So let's define what is gerrymandering in general.
So gerrymandering is basically uh, the act of drawing congressional districts in a way that benefits the party who's drawing them. Drawing congressional districts for partisan gain. And this is not new. We talk about it a lot now, but the first known instance of gerrymandering, and this is how it got its name, was in like 1812 when the governor of Massachusetts, a guy named Eldridge Gerry, uh, drew a district that looked like a salamander. And that's how it became a gerrymander. The Boston Globe ran an article about it and called it a gerrymander, and that's why it's literally why it's called a gerrymander. Uh, so, right, rando
That's
stuff.
awesome. Yeah,
Uh,
I didn't know that until this morning.
yeah, so it's been around forever. It is certainly not forbidden by the Constitution. There is a little bit of like I feel like to some level, gerrymandering is, hey, you won, you lost,
Yeah.
and I think it's a matter of extent and sort of how it's changed over 200 plus years. But it is important for people, to start with the idea that this has been around for 200 and some odd years. This is not a
Yeah.
new construct.
Yeah, and so for somebody like me, my initial reaction to something like this is I've been learning more about it over the years because I'll be honest, like I was ignorant to it until about 5 or 6 years ago. I had no idea what gerrymandering was or meant. But then talk a little bit about, like, this went to the Supreme Court, correct? And basically they had a decision on it.
Yeah. So if when this started to get pretty bad was after Obama was elected in 2008. And the Republicans kind of looked around and saw a landscape that didn't look very good. And then they did something very, very smart. They actually instituted a project which they called Project Red Map in 2008. And the goal of that project was to take over as many state legislatures as they could in 2010. These dates are important because every 10 years we do a census. And that census is why we reapportion and redistrict. Reapportionment is after we do the census, we say, oh, Texas grew in population, California shrank in population, Texas gets 2 extra seats, and these other states lose seats, other states gain seats. That's reapportionment. Some states stay the same, but population moves within those states, even if they stay the same. So then every state redistricts, where they redraw their district. This is all done at the state level. Congress has nothing to do with how this is done. So in 2010, Project Red Map was incredibly effective, and the Republicans took back over 700 legislative seats in state houses around the country, and they got 22 trifectas, meaning they had the House, the Senate, and the governor's seat in 22 states, compared to 11 for the Democrats. This cost them $30 million. Fucking worth it. From that point on, they went all in on gerrymandering and redistricting. So, of course, these districts get drawn, they get challenged in state court and federal court. It works its way up to the Supreme Court, in a case that involved 2 states, North Carolina and Maryland. North Carolina was a Republican state, Maryland was a Democrat state. They had both gerrymandered. Both parties do this. This is not something
Yeah.
that only Republican states do. It's just that Republican states, I think it's fair to say, are much more aggressive about it. Uh, but it was by design. 2 states. We want this case with 2 states going to the court. And the court, was faced with 2 questions. The first question was, is gerrymandering for partisan gain constitutional? Can we do this? The second question was, is this something that the courts can hear at all? It's a term called justiciable, right? Or is this something that the courts have no business hearing? And there's a long history of Supreme Court precedent and around this thing called the political question doctrine, which basically means that the Supreme Court can say, we're not hearing this. We don't think the courts should decide this. This is a purely political question. And on its face, that sounds sensible, but you scratch the surface just a little bit and you're like, well, what is a purely political question? Foreign relations, purely political. Supreme Court should probably stay out of that stuff. But almost everything else, we need the court. The question is, should the court have a role in safeguarding around the margins of politics or not? And that's really what that question meant. Should the court be able to decide that a state that's gerrymandered their districts? So in North Carolina's case, it went from like a 6-5 split, 6 Republican seats to 5 Democrat, to 10-3. And the only reason that it wasn't 11-2, and this was on record from the
Mhm.
guy who drew the maps, is he said the only reason it wasn't 11-2 is we couldn't find a way to make it 11-2. And this was a state that had voted 52% Democratic, 48% Republican. Now the Republicans have 10 of the 13 seats. Okay, so the question then is, does the court have a role in looking at that and saying, no, these congressional districts don't reflect the political makeup of the state. They don't reflect the will of the voters, and we want them to redraw them. And the court never got to the is partisan gerrymandering okay question, because they said, no, courts don't have a role in this at all. Not meaning we're not going to hear this, meaning you can never bring a claim for partisan gerrymandering in any court ever. It's not the type of thing that a court can hear. Now, I'm going to sidebar. I'm going to veer off for a second, because we did an episode a couple weeks ago on judicial activism, and we talked a lot about how when the Republicans are activists at the Supreme Court, it strips rights and it minimizes rights, and the Democrats' activism tends to expand rights. This is a beautiful case of that, right? Because
Yep.
gerrymandering dilutes votes. It dilutes the voices of the American people. And the Supreme Court didn't just say it's allowed, it said it's not even the type of thing that a court has any role in talking about at all. The courts don't exist as a check or balance when it comes to partisan gerrymandering. Go at it, folks. So it's kind of this incredible abdication of judicial responsibility that now means partisan gerrymandering completely fine. Important to know also the 15th Amendment specifically prohibits racial gerrymandering. You cannot draw districts that are racially biased.
Oh, really? They don't give a shit about that. Like,
Well,
that is
right.
like the entire gerrymandering system in Texas. Like every
But no,
map you could look at and be like, yeah, this is all racially gerrymandered.
right, and you hit on it, right? That's the thing. What's the difference if we assume, which is an assumption mostly borne out by history, that people of color, blacks and Hispanics and Asians, whatever, tend to vote Democratic? Well, now
Because it
all you
includes their rights.
yeah. So now all the state of Texas has to do is say, no, we're not gerrymandering based on race. We're gerrymandering to give ourselves political advantage. Well, that there's some carryover to race. Oh, we didn't pay attention to that. We weren't paying any attention to that when we looked at the demographic makeup of every fucking block in the state of Texas. Okay, of every street, of every zip code, of every school district in the state of Texas. We weren't looking at the demographic makeup of those states. We were just looking for partisan gain. We're sorry if there's some sort of carryover. It's complete bullshit. Because
Yeah.
of course you can racially gerrymander and dress it up as partisan gerrymandering, and now that's okay.
Yeah, and it's not okay. It's not like this is it, I think everybody fundamentally knows, and this is one of the issues Texas might run into this time through, right? Like they racially gerrymandered the maps here, expecting the same Latino turnout for Republicans that they have. I think Florida did the same thing, and then they instituted a terrible immigration policy, which pissed a lot of people off and could potentially lose a lot of those voters. Which so a lot of this stuff they're saying could backfire. But yeah, like pretending like any of this isn't racially motivated is silly, and it drives me freaking insane to see. But so like where like okay, well let's talk about the difference between the gerrymandering between like what Texas did and then what California and Virginia did. Do you believe that gerrymandering should exist in a way where people still like that the voters are still involved in it?
Well, I think any sort of uh yes is the short answer, right? Like it is more this inherently anti-democratic measure is given a democratic sheen if states get to vote on how their maps are drawn. That that doesn't mean it's completely right. Like I said before, I don't think that it's wrong if a party has control of the state house. Well, one of the perks of that is you get to draw the districts. Uh,
Yeah.
so does it have to exactly match the political makeup of a state? No, I don't think it does, but there's got to be some sort of guidelines, right? So like, and I think it's worth talking a little bit about how this works, right? Let's take uh, Houston, for example. Let's say, or a city, let's take an American city, and cities tend to vote Democratic. Let's say that city has four congressional districts and the city votes 55-45 Democratic. Okay. And all those districts are represented by Democrats who won 55 to 45, 55% to 45%. Okay. Now the Republicans come in and they take power and they look at that and they're like, well, this sucks. We want Republicans taking those seats. So there's two primary ways they do it. There's cracking and packing. Okay. Now, cracking means you're going to take that district of 55-45, you're going to take all of them and you're going to break it into a bunch of different pieces and you're going to reorganize those pieces so that the 55 gets diluted. Now you spread that 55, and you look at the blocks, you look at where those votes are, and you draw the lines down the street. The street I used to live at, the development I used to live in, the main street that went down it had a Republican on one side and a Democrat on the other. I moved and I had a new representative. So you look at that and you're like, great, how can we rearrange these lines just a little bit so that that 55-45 is, 50-49-51, right? And what you do alongside that, and sometimes you can do one and not the other, is you pack, where you say, okay, when we crack these districts and we break them all up, we're going to accept that we're going to have one. There's just too many Democrats in this city. So we're going to pack them all into one district. And that district is going to be an 80-20 Democratic district, and all the other three districts are going to be 53-47 Republican districts. Now you have, in a city that's 55-45 Democrat, three Republican legislators, one Democrat legislator. And why this is undemocratic is, if you're in that district, certainly if you're in that district of 80-20, your voice has just been diluted, where your vote mattered, where you shifting your vote because you don't like the Democrat, you think that they've lost touch, right? Where you shifting your vote because a compelling Republican has come on the scene and you're like, this guy seems moderate. I kind of like them, right? Now, none of that matters anymore. Your vote, whether it's Democrat or Republican, isn't going to shift it because the divide is too big. And the bet that you make, if you're the Republicans in Texas, is that 53-47 is going to hold. And historically it has. Whether or not it will this year, we don't know.
Yeah.
But
This
that's
year's
kind of a little bit of how that works.
Yeah, this year is going to be interesting because, like the political discord is pretty heavy at the moment. And there is a good chance. It's funny because, like, a lot of my Republican friends here in Texas, their resolution at the moment is just to not vote. So, like, I don't see a lot of Republicans voting for Democrats because they're convinced that any Democrat by label is the enemy because it's all they hear on Fox News and from the president. So like like in their head, switching would be like jumping over enemy lines and joining the other side, And I think for most people that's a bridge too far to cross. But I think in general their solution is just to like put down their weapon and walk away. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that. So I'm really curious how that impacts the midterms this time around, because in some of these gerrymandered districts, and we'll see what happens. But and I think that the people that were on the fence, like the people that voted for Trump, that were like based on the economy or based on like even the border protection, things like that, most of those people feel like they were duped. So like a lot of, I think there's the people that still are going to be active voters that may not be in line with what's going on. There may still be some flips, but I think for the most part we're just going to see historically low Republican turnout in these next elections, and I'm curious how that impacts what's going on. But
Yeah,
um
I think buried in there is an important part of why gerrymandering is bad, right? There's always going to be a certain number of districts that are non-competitive. A rural
yeah,
Texas district is always going to be pretty non-competitive, uh,
or all of Oklahoma.
or all of Oklahoma. Yeah, but
Which really should just be a rural district of Texas.
but that's right. I just drove through Oklahoma this week. It's terrible.
I know,
Sorry,
just lump it in with
Oklahomans.
just lump it in with Texas in like the part that everybody forgets about.
I was like, oh, thank God we're in Arkansas. uh,
Said like three people ever.
yeah. Uh, but no, I think, if you have districts that are relatively proportional, let's say there's some sort of standard deviation formula that independent redistricting commissions are allowed to are work by, and this is what Democrats have proposed in multiple years in the last 10 years. Independent redistricting commissions that are going to do the maps, that have, that are putatively nonpartisan, but have Democrats, have Republicans, and some sort of mathematical formula so that some semblance of similarity to the actual makeup of a state is held in more districts. It's not going to be all of them. Well, then all of a sudden, these people that are sitting out, maybe they don't sit out, or maybe they do. It's their right to sit out. but a Republican sitting out in Austin doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? If because Austin's 70-30 Democrat. A Republican sitting out in a 55-45 Austin district, which doesn't exist, well, that person's going to matter. Now, they might say, fuck it, my vote matters and I'm going to vote. Or if they sit out, now the Republicans have to pay attention. Now they
Yeah.
have to say, our message we have to adjust our message. Because if they just bury discontent in a plus 40 district, then it doesn't matter. Like, we talked last week about Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. It was like a 20-point swing. Still went by 13 to the Republican. Like, they don't really need to give a shit about that district. They don't need to invest any money in it. They don't need to change their messaging. They're still winning it by 13. That's interesting because it's another 20-point swing for all these not districts, not Marjorie Taylor Greene former districts.
Yep.
So that's where this, like, you can sit out your vote if you don't want to vote for a Democrat. You don't have to vote for a Democrat. Like, not voting is a form of protest. But if those non-votes matter more, then the party that isn't getting them, that's counting on them, either has to die or pay attention.
Yep. So where do we go from here?
Well, what I hope would happen, like, we now have Virginia. Florida has yet to decide what they're going to do. I think they have a special session coming up next week. Just to scorekeep for a second, Democrats right now are plus 11, Republicans are plus 9. Good job, Texas. But I think that, the Democrats, to their credit, have consistently brought up national legislation to ban gerrymandering or at least limit gerrymandering on a national scale. And I think they have to keep doing it. I was all like, yay, MAGA tears, at the beginning of the episode. And yeah, fucking for today, I'm guzzling those down. But I don't think that it's right. I don't think that a healthy democratic system is one where, in order to fight, you have to completely dilute the votes of people in your state. I absolutely would have voted for Virginia because the only way to fight this shit is to fight this shit, right? You can't bring
Yep.
a stick to a gunfight, and that's what the Democrats have been doing. But I do hope that when they take the House, which they should in 2026, put this legislation up. Show that you're the party of morals and values, right?
Yep.
Show that you're willing to make things a little more difficult for yourself to do what's right. It's real easy to be in the opposition and scream about this stuff. So what I really hope is that, this they stick to their guns and they're like, yeah, we won. We didn't like what we had to do in order to win. Now we're going to try and make it so that that thing can't happen. We only did it
Yeah.
because we did the wrong thing for the right reason. And now that we won, having done the wrong thing, we're going to try to make that wrong thing go away.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. In my opinion, I think, and I know this won't happen because Republicans, their policies don't win on anything except for with wealthy people, like when it comes to the majority of Americans. And so it's pushing any kind of change on this is going to be a challenge because Republicans have a lot of control and they have terrible policies around the majority of like issues in our country, things that are wildly unpopular. But in my opinion, like every state, everybody that either registers or maybe you hold a preliminary, like a primary vote to basically decide overall which direction you would vote. And like there's no maps, nothing, like based off of the demographic of how people in your state would vote generally. Like, so if you're a registered Democrat or you register Republican, like whatever that split is, then the state gets that many representatives, right? So like if you're a minority party, so let's say like Texas gets 55% Republican, so they get if it was, I don't know how many seats, let's say
It's like
there's 40
35.
or
So it'd be
so
like
seats.
20 to 15 or 20. You're like
Yeah.
21 to 17, something like that.
Yeah. So like if you're a Democrat and you're running, you can still run and potentially win a seat, but you're going to have to compete against Republicans in those districts. But it comes down to more of a popular vote rather than district by district, and then each party gets a certain number of representatives based on that. Like, so if you get all the Democrats that get X amount of votes are the ones that get voted in, and vice versa with Republicans. So I don't know, like there it's ultimately I think that it in my opinion, I think we need to figure out a way to just get it to all go away. The hard part about that is that if you cut out districts in general, uh, and there's always going to be a fight for fairness on the lines, right? Wherever any district map where a line ends, there's going to be potentially people that feel marginalized because of that. So in my head, I was like, well, if you just get rid of all of the lines and you go based off popular vote and percentages, that is probably the fairest way to divvy up seats. But what it does is it kills a lot of local representation. So like, and the whole point of local representation is that you have somebody that represents your districts and your needs in Congress. And, we would lose a chunk of that because the majority, then it becomes a popularity contest. And so, you're gonna have people from all over, like it's going to be people mainly in the biggest cities in the state that are winning all of the representation for the entire state.
Yeah, you can't do away with districts. Like, and it's not that the district system is broken. It is there is a
I
lot
mean,
of
it
debate.
kind of is. Have you looked at
Only
some of these lines? Look at it,
Yeah, but
dude.
that's only in its
I wish our
implementation.
podcast was more visual because
Yeah, but
if you
that's
could see
only in
some of these
its
districts how they're drawn.
no, it's ridiculous, right? Like they redrew the map that they redrew for Texas. Has it's like a spirograph, where you have in the city of Austin these little tiny bits of a district that explode out as you go east and west to cover all this land because they need to get enough population to outnumber the population in Austin. But it's not the fact that districts exist that's broken. It's how they're drawn, right? Like we need
Yeah,
districts for what exactly you just said. Like the the person in Austin who's looking at like me in Austin, who's like, no, my interests, what I need from a federal representative is completely different than from what the things that someone in Giddings, Texas needs.
yeah,
And the same goes the other way. Right, like
yeah,
Giddings, Texas, does not have the same needs as Austin, and you can draw these. They're called communities of interest. How they draw them, like it's really hard to draw them in a way that's completely fair because do you go by zip code? Do you by school district? Do you go by? There are some people who have been interviewed in other states that have done this, where they're like, "No, we have in this town, like everybody goes to this one place and they go to this one church, and that should be the center of the community of interest, right? That's where all the shared interests are, and that's what we want represented." It's not the district system. It's not how the population is divided into the number of districts. It's how the districts are drawn. That's
yeah,
that's the issue. And
yeah,
again, I don't have a problem with you know th- we I don't have a problem with the winning party getting to sort of pad their number a little bit. Don't lose, right? It is a fight, uh, but if you have to do this in a way that supports and enables political debate, because out of political debate is bred better political policy. And if the goal is to just, and the practice in this case is simply to dilute the votes that you don't want to win, then you're never going to have effective political policy. And if you're in power, you probably don't give a shit about policy. You care about maintaining power, right?
yep,
But that's where the Supreme Court decision is so stupid, because of course there should be a guardrail there. Of course the courts should be able to say this has gone too far. They don't have to draw the districts, right? They don't have to figure it out for people, but they can say this has gone too far. And we do it with the Voting Rights Act. We do it with with same-sex marriage. We do these things with laws all the time. And the court, in a decision written by the people who benefit from gerrymandering, simply said, we are not equipped to handle this, which is not unlike a district attorney saying, yes, there's a lot of crime from the mafia in my city, but I'm not equipped to handle it. I'm going to let the mafia handle it. We want the states to figure this out on their own. The states are the fucking problem. right?
Yeah.
The states have proved that they need guidelines, and there have to be some guidelines, and there have been laws presented, and all the Democrats vote for them, all the Republicans vote against them, and they lose.
Yeah. Yeah, Justice Kavanaugh was just fine, uh, passing a decision saying, "Oh yeah, you can pull people over based on the color of their skin to see if they're an immigrant or not." But God, you can't draw a map that would be, that we're not going to get involved in like anything that involves maps and those being potentially drawn wrong. That could be racially driven. Go fuck yourself, all of
Yeah,
them. I hate them.
yeah, you don't want to make a cake for a gay marriage for a gay wedding. That's no problem because if we force you to make that cake, your your religious freedom is somehow infringed upon, and we don't want to infringe upon rights. Oh, you want to draw a voting district that infringes upon the weight of a minority population or a whole half a city's voting, votes. We're cool with that because guess
Yeah.
what? A Democratic Senate is not is not appointing, Alito and Roberts and Kennedy and whichever the
Yep.
other Thomas, that fuck.
Which, to be honest, they should be. Like, I'm so over the morally bankrupt uh leadership that we have in this country. Like, I'm just begging. Like, I feel like we all are like attaching so quickly to guys and people that just feel like they're honest at the moment, because we're missing so much of it, but which is also dangerous. But we're getting low on time, so I want to move us. This was a good conversation, but I want to make sure we get to our shut the fuck up for the week. So who we telling to shut the fuck up this week, Alan?
I'm going back at Democrats who just don't who just take the Jews for granted. I listen to this podcast, Breaking Points, pretty regularly, and they've got some super progressive, ardent anti-Zionist lefties on it, and they also have a couple of Republicans on it. It's relatively balanced. But they were talking about the Michigan Senate primary, and that's an interesting primary because there's an APAC pro-Israel sitting congresswoman who's running, who got booed off the stage, and she's backed by Schumer and all these very moderate normie pro-Israel Dems. She got booed off the stage, and the guy who is coming up really really fast is a Muslim guy, Abdul El Sayed, something like that, who
Yeah.
is anti-Zionist, right? So these two, Crystal Ball and Ryan Graham, are talking about this. They're two of the lefty hosts, and they're saying, "Wow, isn't it amazing that you know being anti-Hezbollah and some other just like horrible, like anti-Nazi tattoos is no longer a deal breaker in the Democratic Party. Wow, how times have changed, and they're like, they weren't casting a judgment on it, except they were going to say some shit about Hezbollah is actually not a terrorist organization. It's a fucking terrorist organization, right? So they're like, wow, this is amazing. You know, you can not give a shit about Hezbollah and now get elected in Democratic primary. And like 2 minutes later, the woman Crystal goes in with, I'm hearing a lot about the political homelessness of the American Jew, and she just goes, give me a fucking break. There's a plenty of Jews who are anti-APAC, who have a lot of problems with what the state of Israel is doing. The American Jews vote strongly on social justice issues, so just get the fuck out of here with that stuff. And I'm paraphrasing, but not much. Yeah, that's pretty much how she was phrasing it. Like, get the fuck out of here with your politically homeless American Jew. And I was like, no, that's the problem right there. 2 minutes ago, you were saying Hezbollah, the fucking terrorists, are actually not that big a problem. And it's okay if we have candidates that don't give a shit about, Hezbollah having a strong presence in Lebanon, that don't feel that Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. 2 minutes ago, you were like, that's good. And now you're like, and Jews don't care, or we don't care if you're politically homeless because you're going to vote with us on social justice issues. It's like, you're probably right that I am. Okay. Going to vote on social justice issues. But man, I hear you, right? I hear you dismissing that political homelessness of American Jew argument. I hear you not giving a shit about it. I hear you conflating it with your disdain for AIPAC. Okay. And your
Yep.
disdain for what the government of Israel is doing. I hear you saying, oh, well, there's plenty of American Jews who really don't like Netanyahu and what the state of Israel is doing, and who really don't think that AIPAC should be determining who gets elected and who doesn't. Therefore, the American Jew is not politically homeless. Nope, you're wrong. And in being wrong, you're proving the point. And you should shut the fuck up and listen for a second. Because honestly, your positions aren't going to change. But how you talk about them and how you listen really should change. It really has to change. Because at some point, it's going to matter. And the more I hear people on the left being like, oh, Hezbollah's not that bad, the more I'm like, how bad is the left actually? I know how bad segments of the right are, but how bad are segments of the left actually? Right? I
True.
can't close the book on that. It just keeps getting longer and longer. And it's because of people like that. So they should shut the fuck up.
I agree. They should all shut the fuck up. You know, here's the thing that I think you being Jewish, and maybe you understand this and maybe you don't, is that white people like myself have very little connection to any kind of heritage for the most part. You know, like I have some friends that are really strong Italians that have like a strong connection to like their upbringing, their history, their heritage. But guys like me, we don't. And so asking guys like me to empathize with, you know, a Zionist or to even just kind of understand that when we have no feeling of connection to a past or a history at all is like speaking to the wind, you know. And there's a lot of people that say some ignorant shit because they don't have those connections. And I'll be honest, I don't either. Me trying to pretend like I understand what it's like to have family members that went through and lived through the Holocaust and what that feeling was like, we can't. And so the best we can do is try to understand and empathize. But, you know, like my I'm a mutt. I'm mostly Swedish, but I have very little connection to my heritage at all. Furthermore, my dad makes me not want to have any connection to it at all. So, you know, like I understand the sentiment of people saying the shit that they're saying, but I also understand that it's out of complete ignorance and lack of empathy and understanding for a people group that has a very deep connection to Israel. So, you know, I agree. They can shut the fuck up. So,
Yeah. Also,
unless they're Jewish, then I'm not.
yeah,
Then I'm just
also,
gonna stay out of it.
if we have all the money and control all the media and all the banks, don't you want us on your side?
True. That's why we're still friends, Ellen. It is not. Well, what are we talking about next week?
Check. We were going to go with, what was it? It was a good one. School vouchers. Fuck school vouchers.
That's right. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah.
School vouchers it is. Well, for all of our loyal listeners, who I could probably name by name, at the moment, see you next week. Dano! Woo! Oscar! Get out there. Tony, this one's for you, bro.
Tony.
See you later.